and there's certain feels in there that good players trust, so that when they're coming down the straight, they revert to it to be comfortable. And I sometimes think if you have a mind which says you need to analyse and look hard at the detail of what they're actually doing and look at how they play before you even jump in and try and make changes, because one change could throw everything out the window. And at a time where players are either playing for their careers or playing for their money, wages, whatever, that's a very dangerous game, isn't it, to guess what they think could happen.
I think that's the really important point of all that is that, if you have some junior who's okay and he wants to be on the PGA Tour, there's sort of less risk for that, right? He's got a long way to go from where he's at to what his goals are. Yeah. But if you have a guy who's ranked 100th in the world, he's like, I want to get better, man, very quickly that guy could lose his job. So,
but if you take into account what you know from biomechanics and experience, if you were going to impart that on a junior now, right? What's the best advice you could give someone younger to the game that would help them progress in the right direction? Would it be as simple as, there's a common denominator that players all have decent posture or balance, or, where would you advise a junior to go without seeing it? Without
seeing them, that's hard, right? I mean, the first, and this is just sort of a dumb statement, but the first is find a really good coach who's not really dogmatic to be in your corner, and what I would say for the rest of your career. I think it's sort of silly when a kid gets developed, gets his tour card, and then goes and finds a tour teacher. It's stay with the guy that got you there.
Sometimes there is a perception, isn't there, that when you move up a level, you need to move up a level with the coach as well. Do you know what I mean? Suddenly the guy who's got you there is not good enough anymore.
Yeah, I
need to change to elevate my game as opposed to develop my skills in the direction that I'm already going.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just especially because there's so much information out there, whether it be the internet or whatever. There's so many great coaches out there. So if a kid's partnering with someone who they know is really putting their work in to be as good a coach as they can be, the person cares about the kid, they know that person's history, they've seen all sorts of upticks and downticks in their game in their life, that's one of the most powerful things you can have in your corner for the duration of your career. So, this is where even if a guy goes to me, and let's say, and I've had this happen where it's just sort of okay, I'm kind of interested in what you have to say. It's if you have a guy you've been working with, I don't mind sort of bouncing stuff off of each other, but you need to keep that guy close to your vest because he's got so much information about you that I can never recreate. You do not want to lose that. That's so valuable for your whole career. And golf is always this sort of uptick and downtick and mini where you're playing great and many sort of slumps or whatever. So that's just the game.
And if you take that on a stage, then in a time where at the moment it's 3D and technology, it's the times where actually that can be too much, where we sometimes lose sight of the basic thing that we're trying to do because of all this technology that's now within the golf industry. And I remember going, this is pre-Tiger. This was when Chris Como had just turned up on the block and saying, what about pressure tracers and things? And you said to me, I remember, you said, that's an ingredient in a recipe. All these pieces are just little ingredients that go in a big recipe. You know what I mean? And sometimes you need an accumulation of those pieces to actually have a very distinct idea of what's actually happening. Yeah. But in simple terms, it's probably quite easy to help somebody hit it straighter or further.
Say that last part? It's easy to what?
Easier to get someone to hit it straighter or a bit further without having all that to start with.
Yeah.
Because that can confuse it. And in my experience, sometimes players don't even need to know that. That's almost for a coach's benefit to clarify what they already know, as opposed to, you give that to a player. Wow. You know what I mean? He could suddenly create a vast array of different things from there that are completely unnecessary.
Totally agree. I mean, look, I don't think if you have a certain level of kind of like wisdom and prudence with how you sort of, impart things onto a student, I don't think there's any downside to learning as much as you can, right? Like that's running in the background. I mean, somebody go read a book on, like genetics or whatever, or some technical book. It doesn't mean they have to talk about it all the time, right? So to me, you can go down the rabbit holes with whatever technology, with whatever research, but in terms of what is oftentimes beneficial to passing to a person you're working with, I mean, like I rarely use at a PJ event much technology other than my phone for a little video here there.
I rarely use much technology apart from my phone.
Yeah. Wait, what?
I sometimes use very little technology apart from my phone.
Yeah. I mean, this is where it's just like I'll go events where I won't pull out a TrackMan for a person. And sure as heck not have any force plates. Like if I'm going to like get the 3D and the force plate data, let's say of a person, like a better player who's competing, I'm going to get it at the tops 2 to 3 times a year, and usually more about once a year type of duration. And really more than anything, it's just kind of like for me to kind of be like, okay, this is sort of how things are changing. And then also, if someone's playing really nice, it's not bad to have it in case they kind of get into a funk or they get an injury and they have to take time off. Then you sort of have that kind of like in a vault that you can pull it out when you need to and use it as a reference potentially if you're trying to sort of recreate certain mechanics. But again, it's not something that they ever really see. It's just for my own kind of, due diligence, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I use technology, it'd be more as a performance measurement of where they are at a point in time, whether that be really good, really bad, or within a process of change. But even then, the amount that I would give the player would probably be minimum to just maybe give them a bit to reinforce it, a bit of confidence, but nothing that's going to send them, right, I'm going to go on Google and I'm going to type in pressure shift right, left, moment on. Because the big thing with it is the theory is great. Everyone, how things work is perfect. But the reality is you can't see it. You can guess, or you can try and interpret information into a swing. But unless they're all strapped up and you really, it's a guess, isn't it? And I always think you want to work with things that you can physically see, so that you can physically see a player improving and developing, and they can see that. And then if that science comes in, or, I would, let's say, bring an expert in at a certain point, expert in this or expert in that, with a specialised subject, they would then reinforce the direction and the work that you're already doing, just to back up that message to the player. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I mean, and I've got my list of questions here.
Oh yeah.
We could be complete. We could have been here all night, but I'll move through. Now here's the thing. I've got 2 more questions before we come to the bigger, right? So at this moment in time, right, everybody.
Can I say something real quick? Can I just say something real quick?
Sorry?
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
So there's a question I think is interesting that at some point I would kind of like to answer. I just saw it. What has you most curious right now? What do you think the instructor will know in 5 years that we don't know now? I want to answer that one. That's a good one.
Oh, you go for it. That's a good question as well. I didn't even write that one.
You want me to answer right now?
You go for it.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you go for it.
So I think the question of repeatability is a big one, right? So I could go on and on about this. I think I saw Scott Cox on here also. So things like rate of closure of the face. I came up with a thing, I called it face closure per displacement. Scott Cox at the same time called it, I think, club face vector deviation. Same concept, different language. It was kind of cool because we both came up with it like right at the same time. Things like 3D flat spot, yada yada yada. To me, this idea of where does repeatability come from, I think is a big question that I think we'll have a much better sense of it in 5 years. And then also when we're looking at the kinetics side of things, we're really just able to look at right now, what are our hands doing to the club? And we're actually just looking sort of the combined of of the hands. We can't really see what each individual hand is doing. And then we're looking at what our feet are doing to the ground. But we have no idea what muscles are actually firing in the body. This is where I think the feel of a player, even though it's not perfect, can give us a little bit of insight in terms of what muscles are actually firing. Maybe we'll make some progress with EMG stuff, or how to measure kind of muscle firing. Or there's a group that did a study in Japan that they actually had a force transducer on the grip, and they could measure the contribution of each hand. So maybe we'll have some more insight into that. I think that would be pretty cool stuff. So I think repeatability, which I'm going to say is probably there's a couple of different buckets for that. There's probably the motor learning bucket. There's probably an end range of motion bucket that Bryce DeChambeau is really into, that we've talked a bunch about. There's probably what I would call a sensitivity to error bucket, which would be the face closure stuff and the 3D flat spot stuff. So I think overall the repeatability, a couple of different things, but like the repeatability.
And that would be amazing, but would probably highlight even more individuality in players.
Kinematics, similar swings, but the muscles inside can be totally different that are firing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like,
and you'd never know that without. It'd be like, I know Dr. Kwan's talked before about individual hands on the club, but he said there was no way of measuring the actual amount of pressure applied by each hand. But he just got probably a mid-hand point that he was measuring.
So if you do the kind of what they call the inverse dynamics, you can't measure it that way. At least, yeah. So, but if you have, it's sort of like how you have a force plate, and you have a force plate for your right foot and your force plate for your left foot, and you can measure the forces of each foot.
Yeah.
If you had, in a sense, a force plate for your right hand, a force plate for your left hand, you can measure the forces of each hand. It's just you would actually need the grip to essentially be a force plate to be able to do it. And they actually they have one. They have one in Japan. Wow. They actually a group did a study. I don't know how long. It was quite a while ago, and they just kind of disappeared. I mean, I think it was extremely expensive to make. But they did have a group. I think the author of the paper's name is Koike or something like that. But they do actually have a group that did a study on that. So it would measure the forces of each hand. It would measure the torque. It was cool.
Have you seen that paper?
I have. Yeah.
And is that how far away is the golf industry from measuring hand talks? 5 years?
Probably a ways. I just think the technology is super expensive, so it's just a matter of how do you get something like that truly funded?
Well,
for a very small piece, a very kind of like, the perception of a very small question in a small part of life.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So,
it's in the biomechanics department. It's like you got this whole department at a university. You have golf, and then you have this very small question within golf, and the thing costs $100,000+ to make. It's like
yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I'm obviously conscious on your time as well, and there's loads of questions on here. So let's cut to the chase then. What was it like to work with Tiger? Was it what you thought it would be?
No, it was not. I didn't quite realize how sort of tough of a place his body was at on the front end. I mean, I knew it was tough, but it was like, he was in a rough spot with his body. It was weird, right? It was very different than what I thought. So it was really challenging. I'll say this: it was much more difficult than I thought, but in a lot of ways, much more rewarding than I ever imagined it to be. I imagined it to be rewarding in a sense of like, oh, he's going to play. You're so excited. You're going to work with the best golfer of all time, and just the typical things that you could imagine would kind of someone would think at the opportunity. And it ended up being rewarding in a much more, not to get like all weird, but like much more spiritual sense, right? Because it's like, I saw a guy who was so beat up, like not give up. And it was like, it was inspiring in a way that sort of transcends golf. And it made me sort of like, I would say, a much better teacher. I don't want to get all like much better person, but just to be able to kind of really roll up your sleeves and, just sort of immerse yourself in something more from the perspective of just trying to help someone who just does not want to give up with their goals. Definitely didn't feel like glorious, right? But it was just like a roll up your sleeve.
I can only imagine. The better the athlete, the harder the demands.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where, puts hair on your chest type of thing, right? And it's just like, it was a great challenge. And, I think the biggest thing was like, the guy was just hurt. He was really hurt. And then he just did not give up, and he could have easily given up. And I just think that's, it was incredible to be a part of that and see that and help with that at whatever capacity I could.
And I think you did an amazing job in helping somebody come back, because there aren't many world-class athletes who come back from serious injury all the way to the top of the game in that amount of time. I think if over here you'd look at it in soccer, if players have had serious injuries, it's either takes them a long time to come back, or they never quite come back because the body's not able to fire to the level or speed that it could pre-injury. And then you've got all the psychological factors as well.
Oh, there's like almost like its own,
that nothing's gonna.
Oh yeah, there's almost this like PTSD that exists where it's like you've made a motion and you constantly get these like shots of pain up your back or down your leg or whatever it is, and it's just like, even trying to overcome that. I mean, there's so many layers to how difficult it is to come back, especially for something that's kind of a back injury that was, as extensive as his was. So, yeah.
I mean, that was, but the part of it that comes out of it with any athlete at any level is sometimes that what is behind the person is far stronger than what you actually see in terms of them at tournaments or hitting the ball. You know, and to me, the reality of it is almost, you only ever see the glory. You only ever see him re-winning the Masters after X amount of time. But there must have been a time where it was pretty grim, you know. And for you to get involved was a huge challenge, because I remember speaking to you one night, and this was pre-Tiger, and 2 days later he disappeared off everything. I thought, where's Chris Como gone? I'm sure I had a message off him, and you've literally gone, never to be seen again. And then the next thing I see is you're stood next to Tiger on the range. I thought, oh, well, that's obviously where he's gone then. You know, but
I like disappearing every now and then.
Hey, to be involved in that, you know, is a a phenomenal achievement, and you know, it doesn't take away the quality of coaching that you've not just to Tiger but to everything else. Like you said, you know, where it came from, how it came to be, you know, and the mind that is Chris Como that can actually, you know, see things and look at things in a view that's very holistic and open-minded. And that when you talk about things that you see within players, or things that you see within coaching and environments, you know, it's fascinating to hear the direction and the way in which you can see it. So, Chris, I thank you for coming on tonight.
Oh,
I know you're a busy guy. Nice. You know, it's been amazing. I hope everybody who's tuned in has found it as, you know, enlightening as I have. You know, and let's hope we can do it again sometime. Thank you.